well septic contingency inspection addendum has been revised. Again. Hi, my name is Keith Barrett. I'm founder of Vesta Settlements, and I'm going to walk you through the highlights of the revisions in this form. So the vast majority of the revisions, in fact, all of them come in the septic portion of the addendum, specifically the inspection period. So we're looking at paragraph 2B1 and 2, which is where all of the revisions are found. This form is going to be effective September 15th of 2018. And first and foremost, the most notable revision is that the seller option for the septic inspection has been reintroduced to the form. So you have both a buyer and a seller option for the septic inspection. Additionally, there's a blank line that's been added to identify specifically who the septic inspector is going to be. So whichever option is selected, buyer or seller, the parties can kind of have a little discussion about who they want the septic inspector to be. If that line is left blank, then the party whose option is selected, the party who will be responsible for the septic inspection, will be the one to choose the septic inspector. So there's a default there in case no one is identified. Finally, there's some new language added in that paragraph 2B1 that talks about the need to remove any impediments, so improvements, personal property, landscaping, that might prevent the septic inspection from occurring. And in the event that the impediments are not removed by the time the septic inspection is scheduled, then the deadline for the septic inspection can be pushed by whatever number of days the parties agree to. There's a blank line for that. So that's the changes in paragraph 2B1. Because the seller option was added back into the form, we had to create a paragraph that dealt with the procedures for the inspection as a result of that. And that would be paragraph 2B2, which says that if the seller option is selected, then the seller must deliver the inspection report to the buyer a certain number of days prior to the septic inspection deadline. Now, this was done for a fairly obvious reason, because if you don't have that language, it would be possible for the seller to deliver the inspection report on the last day of the deadline. And this would leave the buyer very little time and space to be able to digest all of the information in the report and then decide what to do. Of course, the decision is to either void the deal or to deliver back to the seller a written addendum with the requested repairs, maintenance, etc., whatever fixes the buyer wants. So this would be problematic from a procedural point of view. So this new paragraph 2B2 requires the seller to deliver that inspection report a certain number of days as decided between the parties and agreed to between the parties prior to that deadline. This eliminates that problem then. So now the buyer is going to have a certain amount of time to make these important decisions. If the seller does not deliver the report within that time frame, then this paragraph gives the buyer options. And there's essentially three. One, the buyer can then go ahead and order a septic inspection at the expense of the seller and their sole risk of damage to the property. And the deadline is to be extended by X number of days, again, to be agreed to by the parties at the time of contract execution. Option two, the buyer can simply void the contract. Option three, the buyer can pursue all available legal and equitable remedies that may be available to them. So where the seller misses that deadline to deliver the report, the buyer is given choices here about how they'd like to proceed. Those are the main revisions. The last one occurs at the very end of the form, and it's just a removal of language. And you'll recall in the most recent iteration of this addendum, there was language at the very end that said the buyer is responsible for returning the property to substantially the same condition it was prior to the inspection in the event that, they decide to void based on it. That language at the very end was removed from the form and is no longer found in there, really because depending on who's selected in paragraph 2B1, seller or buyer, then upon their selection, the inspection is done at their cost and sole risk of damage to the property. So there you have the kind of the salient, the highlights of the changes to the form. Hope this is helpful. Look forward to seeing you soon at the settlement table. Take care.